Mariners take the first two, lose the last two, and split a series in New York. We'll recap the series finale and talk about the trade for Mike Baumann coming up here on the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, May 23rd, 2024. This is Titan Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners postgame show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Mariners get shut out by the Yankees today, 5-0. We'll talk about that and look at the trade the Mariners made last night. But before we do that, shout out to our title sponsor today, Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description, and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. So, pretty nondescript game today, not really worth waking up early for or spending your early hours of your day watching. Wasn't a fun game for the Mariners offense, but how much of this was Mariners offense was just bad and Luis Heel was really good?
I think it's mostly the latter. I think we see the Mariners' bad offense show up against the bullpen, where they actually had a couple opportunities to get right back in this game, and they just couldn't really even get close. It was a really bad day for the offense, but again, you got to give this is one of those cases where you have to give your opponent a lot of credit. He was filthy. Like, he's throwing 98 with run on pitch like 98, or pitch like 95 was like a 98 mile an hour fastball with run, and he's throwing 92 mile an hour changeups. He's on a heck of a run right now as well. So yeah, I think this is mostly just you ran into a bit of a buzzsaw today, and that stuff happens. But when you've been as bad as the Mariners offense has been this year and as inconsistent as it has been this year, then anytime you get shut out, anytime you only get 3 hits in a game, like, it's fair to be like, well, the offense sucked today. And again, like I said, at some points it did. Like, they had some really bad at-bats when they had a chance to get back into this game. But no, today I think you just give most of the credit to the Yankees pitching, particularly the starter. He was just it was filthy. Like, it was really good stuff. So tough to blame him, but still 12 strikeouts in this game, like only 4 hard hit balls total. It just wasn't a very good day for the offense. And it's a bad offensive day that happens to coincide with you going up against a pitcher with incredible stuff on the day, who's in the middle of a really good run himself. It just all kind of added up to a performance that looked awfully lackluster and, without urgency from the Mariners at the plate today. Yeah,
Heel's been awesome this year, and he's been part of a rotation that's probably the biggest reason the Yankees are as good as they have been here, especially with Garrett Cole out. So, you ran into a really tough rotation with arguably their 4 best guys available to them in this series. And, you held your own for the first couple games, and then the last couple, not so much. I mean, they did all right against Cortez last night. Like, they were able to run his pitch count up, but they weren't able to push any runs across the plate against him.
Couldn't get the big hit.
Yeah, couldn't get the big hit. Like, they were able to get guys on base. And I mean, Mitch Garver missed a home run by like 1.5 feet. He missed like 3 home runs by like a combined like 5 feet in the series.
Yeah. Garver was good in this series. If you're looking for a positive, And, for example, the 1 home run he missed the other night, that would have been a home run at T-Mobile Park. So kind of funny whenever you see like, oh yeah, that's a home run at T-Mobile, but not at Yankee Stadium. That feels like that should never be the case, but it happens. So, but yeah, Garver was really good in this series. He had a couple of good at bats again today, had the base hit and the deep fly out to dead center field. So, it happens, but there's still positives if you want to look for them offensively today. Just not a ton. There were more yesterday, and certainly, the second game of the series is kind of like what you hold on to as a Mariner fan for how this offense could look. There was, the first 8 innings of the series, trash. The next 10 innings of the series, they look like the best team in baseball. The next, 15 innings, or really 15 of the next 18, very mediocre. Like, it was just kind of a consistent, very Mariner-esque offensive performance in New York.
Yeah. But at the end of it, they still have a chance to go 500 or better on this road trip, which I think is all you could really ask for heading into this gauntlet, like we talked about, about a week ago before they went out on this trip. But today, it's yet another day game, getaway day where the Mariners offense just looked really sluggish. Should we put some stock into that at this point? Because the getaway day against the Royals last week was good. Like they had a solid day offensively that day. But outside of that, I can't think of a day game where they looked competent, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I made this observation on Twitter, and somebody did some research on that for us.
Like it feels like a trend to me, but
yeah. It does. So the Mariners are 7-9 in day games this year, which I'm surprised they've won 7. To be honest,
yeah, that's not that bad of a record, honestly.
And they're 20-14 a night. And they're all the stats. I don't have the exact stats, but apparently all of their stats are significantly worse in day games than they are. All their offensive stats are significantly worse in the day games than they are at night, which is weird. I don't know if there's enough, I don't know if there's anything there like that could actually help the Mariners and kind of fix this problem. But yeah, you just kind of think of like all their like really bad performances. Like I think of the loss in Colorado, that was a day game. I think of the loss against the Cubs on Sunday, that was a day game. I think about the
Guardians shutout.
Right. I think was Hancock getting blown up? Was that
I think that was a day game, yeah.
I think that
in
was
Milwaukee.
A day game. Yeah. So like, obviously today, so Sunday against Baltimore, like it just feels like all their like the games that like if you had to rank every game this year, like their 5 worst games played all happened, during the day games.
Yeah.
So, to be 7-9 or I guess now 7-10 in day games was honestly surprising to me because I really could only remember 1 or 2 day games where they actually won.
Yeah.
So
who was that give you that info?
Yes, that was at Neo ?
Okay.
So yeah, 7-9. I have to do some digging on the offensive stats, the actual offensive stats themselves, but apparently they have not hit as well in day games as they have at night, they have during night games.
Yeah, that lines up with my headcanon there. Yep. So
I buy it.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about Luis Castillo's day here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners postgame show is brought to you by Gametime and FanDuel. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and I get to see the view of every seat in the house, so I know exactly what I'm buying. Gametime's last-minute deals give you up to 60% in savings buying last minute for sports, music, comedy, and more. And to avoid any surprises at checkout, you can turn on their all-in pricing to see the full cost, fees included. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Gametime app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's LOCKEDON, and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. The Mariners now travel to D.C. to face the Nationals. You can catch that weekend series on the Mariners' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that this weekend is search the word Mariners. So let's talk about Luis Castillo's day here, Colby. He ends up going 5 innings pitched, 7 hits allowed, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, 2 earned runs on a couple of solo home runs. So what did you think about his day?
Yeah, pretty similar to his day in Baltimore, where he just didn't really have his best command and control. He didn't really have his best stuff, and he was just pitching like his life depended on it and trying everything he could to, keep his team in the ball game. And he did. He gave up a ton of hard hits, 10 base runners in 5 innings. That's a lot. Only 3 strikeouts. And then of course, the big moment, the bases loaded with 1 out in the bottom of the 5th, and he's able to strand those runners with a couple big strikeouts. So, Castillo, this is why, to me, Luis Castillo is still the ace of this team. There was been a lot of talk about, is it Kirby now? Is it Gilbert now? To me, it's still Castillo, because Castillo still does this pretty well. Now, the first 3 starts, they look kind of like this, but he couldn't really make that big pitch right to end the inning. So I'm not saying that Castillo does this every time, but when Castillo doesn't have his best control and command, and his stuff is a little bit, off on the day, he can still go into a hostile environment against a really good lineup, and he can still give you a chance to win that game, a good chance to win that game. And, it sucks that at 2-0, it already felt like this game was over. But, he was fine. Like, this is not the best Luis Castillo. He needs to be better, blah, blah, blah. But considering today that, he only had 11 whiffs on 44 swings, it's not terrible, not bad. He did get, a 40% whiff rate on the slider, which is pretty good, really good. And he also got 4 called strikes on the slider. So 38% called strike plus whiff. That was a pretty good pitch for him today overall. And 29% whiff rate on the 4-seamer. That's not bad. So it's not like he didn't have anything working today, but it was just kind of grinding through these at-bats, and he was being very careful. And, Soto and Judge in particular, he was really on the corners, and he was going to be okay walking Aaron Judge. And then it just kind of sucks. The one mistake he made all afternoon to Judge, home run. And, it just kind of like, that's how good that guy is. So it was more of a kind of a kitchen sink method today for Castillo. It was 37% 4-seamer, 26% 2-seamer, 23% slider, 13% change. That's a little bit of a different mix than we're used to seeing. Castillo pretty much fastball. He picks one of his fastballs, and then it's a slider, and that's kind of what he rotates. Today it was very intentional. He was very clearly trying to kind of, pitch around Judge and Soto a little bit. If he was going to miss, he was going to miss off the plate to those guys. Again, except for the one pitch he did leave in the middle of the plate, got hit pretty hard. So it happens. Castillo was fine today, but like I said, he clearly did not have his best stuff. He clearly did not have his best control and command, and he just kind of bulldogged his way through this lineup a couple times. And he gave his team a good chance to. Well, he gave his team what should have been a good chance.
You give up 2 runs over 5 innings. That's a good chance to win the game.
Right. And so, it's like, do you want better from Castillo? Sure. If he had gone 6 innings and given up 2 runs, like if they had put him back out there and he had a quick 1, 2, 3 inning, then we would be talking about, oh, what a great day Castillo had. So
sure.
Overall, Luis was pretty good today, but just like in Baltimore, not his best. We've seen him be a lot better, but the fact that he managed to keep his team in this game and give them a legitimate chance to come back and win it, just because they didn't, doesn't mean that Luis didn't do his job. So overall, I thought Castillo was fine. This is more, there are times where Castillo just throws and he'll dominate you. There are times where he'll pitch and he'll just kind of grind through an inning, grind through a lineup. And that's kind of what he's done the last few times out. Not his best stuff, but he's found a way to keep 2 of the best, probably the 2 best offenses in baseball, or at least in the American League. He's found a way to keep them, from exploding. He's found a way to limit damage when they do get runners on base. Like, he's come up with some big pitches and some big spots, and that's why he's still your ace. That's why he's still a little bit ahead of Kirby and Gilbert, because we've seen we've seen those 2 guys not have their stuff, and sometimes they survive, but a lot of the times they just get whacked. And Castillo, for the most part, doesn't really happen that often. He finds a way to at least give you 5, 6, 7 innings, and maybe he gives up 4 runs, but he gives you a legit shot to win the game.
It's the ability to contain, right? Teams like the Yankees and the Orioles, they're going to get theirs at some point. It's just limiting that damage, and Castillo has done a good job of at least doing that, even when he's not at his best, like you said. Another shaky day for the bullpen today. Trent Thornton, 1 earned run in his inning pitched. Gabe Spire continues to struggle, a couple of earned runs for him. And they let this game kind of get away from them. We saw Mike Baumann, the new reliever. We'll talk about him a little later on here. And then Edward Bizzardo with a clean inning. But yeah.
We have 3 new 40-man additions to talk about today, or at least mention.
Okay.
So we'll get to that because the Mariners have just made another claim for a reliever.
Okay. All right, cool. So we'll talk about that. I don't even know who that is, so okay. I'll be hearing for the first time from you. Yeah, I'll be hearing for the first time from you coming up here in a few. But real quick though, before we do that, I want to talk about Julio. I want to go back to the offense real quick and talk about Julio because Julio was moved down the lineup today. He hit 6 today in the lineup. Had another rough day. 2 strikeouts. Went 0 for 4. What do you think about the move to send Julio down in the lineup?
Yeah, it's probably the right move. We're long past the time where, blame the front office for not putting bats around Julio to protect him, blame the hitting coach, blame whatever. We're 50 games into this now, and Julio has like one of the lowest slugging percentages of any qualified hitters in all of baseball. Yeah. It's unacceptable. And so moving him down is like kind of the only thing the Mariners can really do until he figures it out. Because like at the end of the day, like this isn't on, Jared DeHart. This isn't on Scott Service. This is on Julio. Julio has to be the one to fix this. And let's not pretend that Julio doesn't have things he needs to fix. Like this isn't just bad luck. It's been consistent. He's hitting the ball hard, but he's hitting it on the ground. There's no slug whatsoever. You just can't have that guy getting, second, third most at-bats on this team. So you have to move him down. You have to give him a shot. Maybe this takes some of the pressure off. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe this is just something that the Mariners are legitimately going to have to try and, work on all year to get Julio back to a spot where he's lifting the ball with regularity and with authority. So, I think this is really the only reasonable thing they can do. You just can't, nobody is above the team in regards to like nobody is guaranteed to hit second all year because they're Julio Rodriguez. Nobody's guaranteed to be the leadoff guy all year because you're JP Crawford, right? Like you have to earn those opportunities, and they gave Julio plenty of leash to run with to start this year. They let him try to work through this, and it just 50 games in, we're about a third of the way through the season, not happening right now. So until it does, moving him down is really the only sensible thing to do. So we'll see how long this lasts. We'll see if it's even going to happen tomorrow. Mackenzie Gore, a lefty on the mound, they might move Julio right back up. It's certainly possible. So, but we've seen this before. They moved Julio down to 6th, I think, last year. He had the one really good game in Detroit, I believe it was, and then they put him right back up to the 2 spot. So we'll see how it goes overall. But yeah, I don't think that I think even like the people who don't want to blame Julio for anything have to acknowledge that he has been a disappointment this year. He needs to get things going, and that it's not fair to the Mariners to have this player constantly hitting number 2 for an entire season when he's not earning those reps. So
when he's not hitting like a number 2 hitter. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he's not hitting like a top 7 hitter right now. So
right.
Yeah, it's time. It was time to make this move. It probably should have made it a week ago, but whatever. They gave him plenty of time. They gave him way more than they needed to at bats for him to kind of prove that like I fixed this, I'm good, let's roll. Nope.
Yeah.
Keep on trying to fix it, and when you do, you'll get moved up. Obviously.
Yeah.
Like we're not keeping Julio in the 6 hole all year, but we just can't do this. You have to fix it.
Right. His average launch angle right now is down 7.4. His career average in that department is 9 degrees. Then his barrel rate is significantly down right now as well, 7.2%. It was 11.9% last year. His career average in that department is 11.7%. So Julio's going through it right now. He's not doing enough damage. And when he is finding grass, he's only hitting for singles. And quite a few of those, especially on this road trip, have been infield singles. So he's not lifting the ball. He's not putting the ball in the outfield consistently. He is hitting the ball hard, but more often than not, that has been in the ground. He obviously had the one in the gap yesterday or last night, that Judge was able to run down. It was like 108 off the bat or 107 off the bat. Like that was a good sign because I think that was like a fastball up on the top rail. So that was nice to see him be able to actually drive that ball out. But then he comes back today and goes 0 for 4 with a couple strikeouts and just looked pretty bad at the plate. So again, it's even when he's had, the isolated good game or two, he reverts back to this. It goes back to, 0 for his next 9 with 5 Ks. So Julio needs to be consistent and he needs to do more damage. And that's just the fact of the matter, right? That's not trying to drag Julio. That's not trying to talk bad about Julio. That's just what the reality of the situation is. He's just not who he needs to be right now. He's not who the team needs him to be right now. So, I think this is a deserved demotion, frankly, in the lineup for Julio. All right, let's talk about the trade the Mariners made last night and some other 40-man roster moves they made. Coming up here in just a moment, but first a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners postgame show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Baseball season is in full swing, so don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBI, or first-inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. You can also get in on the basketball playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a whole new level during the postseason. Download PrizePicks today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Once again, you can catch the Mariners and the Nationals all weekend long on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. Okay, so the Mariners have made a few moves here over the last 24-ish hours, including trading for Orioles right-handed pitcher Mike Baumann. Before we talk about him, they've apparently made a waiver claim that I still don't know about. So, Colby, tell me who that is, and have you done some research on him? Have you figured out what he's about?
I've tried. There's not a ton on him. His name is Eduardo Salazar. He was recently DFA'd by the Dodgers. He to make room on the 40-man for this claim, the Mariners have DFA'd Sammy Peralta. Who was terrible in Tacoma. So, So he's 26 years old. He's got 2 options left. He just turned 26 2 weeks ago. He's only thrown 2 innings in the big leagues, and those both came this year. He's worked primarily as a starter in the Cincinnati Reds system, and now this year in the Dodgers system as well. Far as I can tell, not a big swing and miss guy. He has some concerns with his ability to throw strikes. Fangraph says he has a 55 fastball, a 40 to 45 upside slider, 45 upside changeup, 55 command. Just kind of seems like bulk arm to throw in the rotation depth pile. But there is the possibility, of course, that Seattle could move him to the bullpen, and they think that they can sharpen something up there, which would be my guess is what they were doing here. But obviously, the old rule, anytime the Mariners acquire an arm, you have to be pretty interested in that arm. I just haven't seen any video, so I can't comment on how well he hides the ball or anything like that. So still trying to figure out a little bit more about him, but just seems like back into the 40-man, kind of depth there. And he's got a couple of options as well. So, we'll see. Like, they can sharpen up the slider maybe, or maybe it already has been. Like I said, I haven't been able to get eyes on him. And obviously it's happened while we were recording. My ability to kind of look and try and see scouting reports and stuff like that is a little bit limited right now, but based on just the statistics and what I have been able to gather so far, feels like kind of just back in 40-man depth, starting depth in Tacoma, and it might be an arm that Seattle thinks that they can get more of out of the bullpen. But for now, he's just back in 40-man depth.
They also added Jonathan Diaz to the 40-man roster yesterday. His opt-out of his minor league contract was coming up, so they had an open 40-man spot they put him on there to keep him, and he'll remain in Tacoma for the time being. But he's like the 7th starter right now. He's had a good year down in Tacoma.
Really good slider, hides the ball well. He's pitched in the big leagues with varying levels of success. He could be the guy that they call up here to Washington, though. And then Salazar could, in theory, replace Diaz in the starting depth, because Kirby Snead's not it.
No.
And right now, with the way Gabe Spire's pitching, the Mariners probably feel like they need a lefty that they can rely on a little bit more.
Yeah, I think they're anxiously waiting for Taylor Saucedo to get back.
That could be on the homestand, right? That would be 15 days.
Yep.
Yeah. So, fingers crossed. Hopefully they do get Sauce, because they do need, some quality lefty out in the pen, because right now the Mariners' current crop of right-handed arms, not exactly thrilled with them facing lefties in general, and Spire is definitely not getting it done. So I think Diaz is the guy that they should call up today.
Any other 40-man moves that I missed besides the trade that we're about to talk about?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Got everything. So last night, they traded for Mike Baumann, who was DFA'd by the Orioles a few days ago. They end up sending Blake Hunt, the catcher that they acquired from the Rays this winter, who was having a really good year down in Tacoma. They also get a 31-year-old catcher, Michael Perez, back in the trade to kind of supplement the absence of Hunt down in Tacoma. What do you think about Baumann? We obviously saw him today. Not a really a good debut for him. Walked a couple of guys.
You didn't think so?
No, but let's not base everything off of one outing.
Couple walks, couple wild pitches. You didn't think that interesting?
Especially a just a few hours after being acquired by the team. Like let's not base everything off of that.
Let's make excuses. Sure, why not?
Right,
that's fine.
What did you think about him though, or what do you think about him?
Today, I don't like him very much. In general, like, I can see the appeal to the Mariners. He does have, at least the numbers suggest, he has a couple good breaking balls. He has a knuckle curve and a slider, both of which, can get swings and misses, both of which are really tough to square up. He certainly throws hard. He, averages 96.5 miles an hour, can touch 99. So fastball velo, it's not an issue. It's just the fastball gets lit up pretty much every time he throws it. So my guess here is that the Mariners look at this and they say, okay, well, you're throwing your fastball, 45% of the time this year. Let's have you throw your slider or your knuckle curve. Let's have you throw that 45% of the time. And then you can mix in, the other two pitches. That would be my guess. Because again, you look at the batted ball data on the knuckle curve and the slider, they've significantly better than his fastball. So it's not like that we haven't seen the Mariners do this before. I watched quite a bit of Baumann last night when they made the trade, just trying to get a feel for arm action and stuff like that. And it's funny, if you lined up 2022, 2023, and 2024, it looks like a different arm slot every single time. Like the windup is different, the delivery is different. Like, so it seems maybe he's a guy who tweaks a lot. Like he's kind of a, kind of one of those guys who likes to try a couple different things. But yeah, one thing that's been pretty consistent, doesn't throw a ton of strikes, doesn't get as many strikeouts as the stuff would suggest that he should be able to get and can get. So I think this is all about command and control with him, mostly. Elevated walk rate, does a decent job of avoiding hard contact, or at least, has at times, but doesn't get as many swings and misses as you like. He's not a high leverage type. And because of that, giving up like legitimate controllable catcher depth, who is knocking on the door of the big leagues, is, in my estimation, a gross overpay. Now, can the Mariners, if the Mariners turn this guy into, a seventh inning type, like a seventh inning type that you trust pretty explicitly, then is it worth it? Sure, of course it is. But to me, this is kind of a gross overpay, and I would have rather just given Ty Buttrey a shot, or Diaz a shot, or Crable, like Vargas even a shot.
Well, it's also like when you just traded Tyson Miller, it's like, do you like Baumann more than Tyson Miller? I guess the Mariners potentially do, but like I would probably rather have Tyson Miller and Blake Hunt right now than Mike Baumann and Michael Perez and Jake Slaughter.
Mm-hmm. the disrespect to Michael Perez you're showing right now.
Right.
Go look at his StatCast page last year. That's all I'm saying.
Right. And
But,
tell him how many games that's in.
Now who's captain semantics? Just go look at his StatCast page.
I don't think that's how that works.
You won't be disappointed.
Right.
But yeah, I don't really get it.
There's a reason none of those numbers are qualified, folks.
Yeah, because he's a catcher, and catchers don't play enough to qualify most of the time. So yeah, whatever. You continue to sleep on the guy. But no, I still don't get this trade. Slept on it. It's not that I don't like Baumann. I would have been not excited, but I would have been, if they had claimed him on waivers, I'd be like, oh, this is a really interesting arm. And instead they trade a top 20 prospect, top 25-ish prospect, somebody who could conceivably help you this year.
Yeah.
And it kind of more or less forces Sebi Zavala on the roster for the entire season, which again, I'm not a Sebi hater like some of you out there, but yeah, that's a spot that you could conceivably.
We can all agree that you can do better, much better there.
I don't know if you can do much better. Catching's really hard to find, but
much better. You can do much better.
It is a spot that
it's
a spot that you probably should look to upgrade now when you get into July. Whereas when you had Blake Hunt, you conceivably could have gone no, we know we need more production from the backup catcher, but we'll just use Blake Hunt instead, and we'll see if that works. Not to mention Hunt had 6 years of club control, and he was going to be a cheap backup catcher for half a decade pretty much until you had to decide whether or not you wanted to actually pay him. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of this. Catcher depth takes a hit. You can never really have enough catcher depth. I know Papierski has been pretty good at the plate. I don't know if he's maintained that, but he was pretty good.
He's hitting 188 now down in Tacoma.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Mariners basically have no catcher depth whatsoever. And just to answer your question to get ahead of it, no, Harry Ford is not a viable answer right now.
Well, I mean, to me, this would say that they think maybe the answer is yes on that. Because, why else would you trade Blake? Why else would you be so willing to trade Blake Hunt for a reliever like this?
What gets even dicier is that what if you have to trade Harry Ford this summer to go get Paredes or Rosa, whatever, pick your bat, doesn't matter. What do you have to trade him this summer? Then your catcher depth is Cal Raleigh and literally nothing that is big league quality.
I mean, maybe you get a catcher at the deadline.
Oh yeah, sure, but that's more assets I got to go spend on something I already had. Okay, I'll go get Elias Diaz from the Rockies, but okay, there are going to be teams out there who want him to be their starting catcher. So now I have to go and I have to give, Ryan Bliss to go get half a year of Diaz to be my backup catcher. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't like it. Yeah. I think the Baumann ad is fine. I think that's a smart ad.
It's not about the pitcher. It's the return. The reason that I don't like it, the reason I'm not a fan of it is 150 billion% the return.
Yeah. For this to become justified, for this to be oh, okay, they knew what they were doing. Baumann has to be at least Trent Thornton, and he probably has to be better than that because, there are guys like this that you can usually get off of waivers in the middle of the year.
And Trent Thornton last year you got for freaking Mason McCoy.
Right.
And maybe I'm overhyping Blake Hunt, but it's more just about the Mariners catching situation in general right now. It's I'm not a Sebi Zavala guy. I thought that Blake Hunt could come up and help and maybe not be Tom Murphy, but be closer to Tom Murphy than to Sebi Zavala for you.
That's certainly the role that they envisioned when they acquired him just this winter. So I don't know what changed to make them think that.
Especially once he's now started to actually hit.
Yeah, I don't know what changed their mind to basically treat Blake Hunt like he was expendable. I don't know. I don't get it because the Mariners, to their credit, pretty good at catchers, pretty good at bullpen arms. Those are two positions that they have really excelled at finding. They found Tom Murphy for free. They found
Austin
Nola for free. They found, they took Cal in the third round. They found Narvaez. I mean, they didn't find him, but they acquired him and, blah, blah, blah. They've had a good track record of finding catchers and all of that. And obviously, the backup catcher at most is going to play 20% of the games with Cal Raleigh in town. But now, if Sebi's the only legitimate option, you kind of have to really try and keep Cal healthy, which is not something you can really do because he's a catcher. That stuff crops up all the time. But now, like, does that mean you play Sebi even more than you already are because you're trying to keep Cal Raleigh healthy for the stretch, or how do you navigate this? To me, this just seems like the writing is on the wall here. And, it seems ridiculous because we're 4 years away from this coming to fruition, but it just seems like the Mariners' game plan is to run Cal Raleigh into the ground for the next 2 or 3 years and then trade him with a year left on his deal and see what they can get. Because it's like, what have you done to put up a safeguard for, Cal Raleigh inevitably missing significant time because he's a freaking catcher and they get hurt. So I don't know. I really don't get this. I don't like this deal at all. It doesn't make sense to me. We haven't heard from, Jerry or anybody like that, as far as I know, about why they would make this deal, or Justin, anybody. But this just feels almost like a little bit of a panic move, because I don't believe that they traded for Blake Hunt and then decided that he was going to be their Tom Murphy. We talked about this over the winter, right? Like, find those guys who are making money and find their replacement who's making no money. So, and that's the way you can shave some money off of that. They had that with Blake Hunt, and they did that with Samad Taylor, right? Like, find a guy who plays a role on this team, is making a little bit of money, replace them with the young guys who aren't making any money. And that's how you can kind of save $3-4 million a year here and there. And they just kind of ran away from that right when Blake Hunt looked like he was ready to, come up to the big leagues and at least try and fill that Tom Murphy role. So I don't know what they're doing. It doesn't make any sense to me. Don't like it. And we'll see if it works. But I'm not a fan of this move. It feels like it feels like paying, 250 cents on the dollar, like a drastic overpay to me. But we'll see. Either they think they're smarter than everybody else,
it's not even about Blake Hunt specifically. It's just about how it impacts the catching situation for you. Mm-hmm. But again, I know you don't think this, but I think this means at least something about how they feel about Harry Ford. Right. I think it has to, frankly. And maybe it does. Maybe it actually doesn't. And maybe you are right. But I feel like it kind of has to.
But here, the problem with that is that,
because dude, if Cal Raleigh gets hurt, you really going to run out Michael Papirski and Sebi Zavala?
I don't see how you roll out Harry Ford, because the dude's been great at the AA, at higher than A ball, basically, for a month. It's kind of like the Clase thing, right? Where you're just just vibes. No. And you're doing that with a player who has a significantly bigger part of your future than Clase probably does. I'm not a fan of it. So to me, it doesn't make any sense. I hate it. And I hate that, this whole idea of rush Harry Ford to the big leagues if you need to, because he's ready. And it's can we at least see him in AAA for a little bit before we just decide?
Now, I do wonder, I know they got Perez, and Perez is likely going to go to Tacoma, but I do wonder if maybe this also opens the door for Ford to get called up to Tacoma, because he's smoking AA right now. Like we talked about yesterday or the day before.
And I don't know if he's ready for it, but whatever. Like I said, the Mariners either, think they're smarter than everybody else and they've just made a major mistake. Maybe not major mistake. They just made a mistake. Or they are smarter than everybody else and they know something about Baumann that the rest of us don't, and he's going to end up being a key figure in this bullpen down the stretch. But if that's what he is, if Baumann is I don't even want to say Paul Sewald, but you know what I mean? If he's a key cog in this bullpen and it turns around and he's pitching big innings for you in August and September, then it sucks to lose the long-term, growth of Blake Hunt, but it's worth it at that point. Anything short of that, and it just feels like you just, panicked almost. So I really don't like the deal at all.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_. Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.